All right, well, welcome everybody to the EPM Empower Hour Live. We have a very special guest here for a few reasons, not only because she's been so gracious to serve our country, but more importantly, what she's done after serving our country. A lot of you guys know my affinity and what we did in our Choose Kindness campaign for Leashes of Valor. Why does this mean a whole lot? Well, not only a lot of people know my journey, but the journey of our organization and how we're so privileged to do loans for veterans. But more importantly, like anything else, it was really sad to me when I found out that on average, 22 veterans die by day of suicide. And it's the people that we've got to really be protecting the most, because think about it, they're the ones that keep us free. And I know that a lot of us are very spoiled and we feel entitled when it comes to that. But if you just look through history, you look throughout the world, that's not just the case. I know that personally, being first generation Cuban immigrant parents that had freedom and then lost it. So, it's great what we've done with them. It's great what they're doing. But it's like I always say, if you care for veterans, if you care for people's mental health, and I'm a little biased on this one, if you like dogs, they represent all three. So that's always one of the great things about how they are paying it forward. So, if you want to look into Danique's background, yes, she's been a naval officer. Yes, her passion, Disabilities Act, everything that she's stepped up for is a whole collection of this. So like anything else, when you're following your passion, you're always just going to do it a lot better, because it's just going to be very natural and your energy is going to flow positive. So enough about myself speaking at this point, but please welcome to the stage virtually Danique of Leashes of Valor. But more importantly, I know that Blaine, Sarah, and Hank are going to be conducting this conversation. So once again, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for what you're doing, not only for this country, but every veteran, but showing how you care for the dogs and everybody that you're saving. It just shows a lot of you, Jason, and everybody's compassion. So on behalf of this country, on behalf of EPM, thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Good morning, or actually not anymore.
Yeah, good afternoon. Okay.
Well, hey everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Hank Samuels. I'm the content brand manager here at EPM. It's a fancy way of saying I work on the marketing team. And then over here, I've got Sarah. Introduce yourself.
Hi, like Hank said, my name is Sarah Rodriguez. I'm the HR coordinator here at EPM.
And today we've got Danique with us. I think probably some people at the company do remember our EPM town hall with you probably about a year ago. But just to kind of give people a little bit of background and get them a little bit more familiar with you, I was wondering if you could just kind of give us a brief intro on yourself. One of the things that I was really interested in was just kind of where that passion for working with dogs and service animals came from. I don't know if it's something that developed early or later when you started your military career, but I think that for me, that's kind of one of the more interesting things, is just how that career path started.
So I was a post 9/11 joiner. I gave up my German citizenship to join the U.S. Navy, and the reason I joined the Navy was I wanted to be a military police officer. So I was an enlisted master at arms, is what we were called. And one of my passions was I really wanted to be a military working dog handler. So while in the service after 9/11, that part of my career never panned out, where I actually became a dog handler, but worked very closely with canine. I did 5 years as an enlisted, all the way up through MA2, which is an E5. And after those 5 years, I had a lot of PTSD and mental health issues, which ultimately resulted in me leaving military service. And that was in about 2007. And right at the time of that, I had a retired military working dog who ended up having to be put down due to illness. And that relationship, and also that, that final conclusion to our relationship was very impactful for me. So I think that passion stayed with me. And then I took for several years to kind of figure out I guess, what my new identity is going to be, because law enforcement and any of those things didn't happen for me. And I also struggled with even identifying my own PTSD. I wasn't really aware that I had it. So ultimately, that led me to Syracuse University using my GI Bill. And really a mental health crash kind of happened, meaning I started seeking therapy and going with other veterans on campus. And that's where I found out about service dogs. At the same time of that, one of my canine friends ended up passing away unexpectedly. So that kind of brought me, I guess, say full circle emotionally. So it was the perfect storm where I was like, what I'm going to school for, I just don't identify with any of these things. And this, this emotional Band-Aid was ripped off. And I started pursuing interest in service dogs, and my husband needed a service dog at the time. He transitioned out of the military. So he went and got a service dog, and thus taking care of a family member who needs help as well. I really saw the difference that made. And I changed my degree field at college to study the policy aspects and everything that has to do with service dogs from that aspect, and kind of have stayed in the industry ever since. So that's kind of everything in a nutshell.
Wow, yeah. See, I had no idea. Were you born in Germany?
I was born in Atlanta,
Oh,
Georgia, and was raised in Germany. So I was a dual citizen. I have parents from each country.
gotcha. Okay, yeah, because I saw that when I was snooping around your LinkedIn before the call. I saw Germanic studies, and I'm like, wow, I had no idea. That's really cool. Well, of course, thank you for your service. I know Eddie extended that as well, but I know Sarah has a personal connection with that too, with her brother serving. But I guess one of the things that I would also wonder is when the idea for Leashes of Valor, started, what was it an easy transition, kind of going from, hey, I enjoy working with dogs, I have this, close connection, or did it take a while to kind of get everything off the ground?
Thankfully, I got good career advice or mentorship advice where somebody said you gotta do your time. So I got hired at other organizations and basically worked all of the different jobs before I made the educated decision that there was still need in the industry for me to create my own organization, but also really learning what those needs are. And I think it just made me more successful to start humble and actually learn all the different aspects of such a unique industry that has just grown over the last 20 years. I mean, we didn't think we'd be at war this long, let alone have this many service dogs all of a sudden pop up as a treatment methodology. So it's been a new industry where everybody's kind of learning on the go still. And I'm grateful that I had to kind of work my way to where we are. But that also allowed me to see the needs that still weren't being met. And that's why we went back to the drawing board and said, we want to do a grassroots kind of organization where it's still peer-to-peer, where somebody's going to answer the phone 24/7, where it's rebuilding that community too. Like there's more to it than just giving them a dog. It is a dog specially trained for them. So we really wanted to have control over the quality of the product. And that's kind of why Leashes was founded.
Yeah, I think that's really neat how you have, just been a voice to like the veterans, or as you like to call them, warriors. I realized that. Is there a reason why you call them warriors? I just think that's really neat. In one of your interviews and when I read on your website, you refer to them as warriors.
I think part of it was also just to kind of ensure privacy. So when we started sharing stories, I needed a way to refer to them in a very dignified way, just to kind of show respect for who they are, but also be very inclusive of all the different demographics. And that's active duty and veterans, and without saying like if it's male or female, especially if I'm giving details of stories. So I thought warrior has just been the term that really just encompassed that identity best for us.
Yeah. And I mean, I've read like how Hank was saying, like I was snooping around your LinkedIn and different things, and I just feel how you give a voice as far as like it's like a twofold thing, as well as like from the dog aspect as well as from the veterans aspect. And I just because those that are listening out there can have like a father, somebody that they know. And like one of the things Eddie said at the beginning is that there's a lot of suicidal rate when it comes to like veterans. And it's like, we see them and we say, thank you for your service. Thank you, for giving up basically your life and your lifestyle to give us freedom. But at the end of the day, it's like when my brother came back, it was a little bit different because, things such as like normality from becoming now a veteran to civilian life, it was way different. And so I see how you are bridging the gap because, like for instance, one of the examples was like my brother, like when we would slam the door, not, like on purpose, he would get very jumpy. We'd be like, oh, what's going on? And so I think it's just amazing how these dogs are trained specifically for veterans. It's not just, one of the things you pointed out, there's a difference between emotional and as well as, so can you elaborate a little bit more as far as like that type of deal, what your dogs do with the veterans?
Yeah, so the dogs are basically custom trained to each veteran. So they're not just what you call an emotional support animal. Their mere existence just makes you feel better. A service dog, which is task trained like ours, is trained to the specific mannerisms that indicate early onset of anxiety, for example. So people that do like ring twisting for wedding band or like messing with an earring, beard stroking, any of those mannerisms can be early self-soothing behaviors, like when children suck their thumb. We do foot tapping, and the dog is trained specifically to interrupt that behavior based on the interview process with the veteran. We find out what that specific mannerism is. So that's one of the tasks taught, is to specifically interrupt their early onset anxiety behaviors, as well as nightmare interruption. So if you have nightmares where you're tossing and turning, or it's more auditory where you're mumbling or speaking, the dogs are trained to alert on that and either lay on you like similar to mimicking a weighted blanket to slowly wake you up without startling you. Or if it's more physical moving of interrupting a nightmare, they will probably do it from further away and probably hit you with their muzzle or their paw. But many of these are the tasks trained that are specific debilitating things that affect the quality of life for those veterans, especially like a good night's sleep and having nightmares, or not being able to sleep in the same room with your family member or partner because you are unpredictable. So it's just things that seem very little that have such a big impact for these warriors.
Okay. And now that if a warrior needed like the service, how do you do the connection? Like how does that process take place?
So it's a little bit of chicken and egg. There's a lengthy written application that the warrior fills out, and then we have several dogs already in training, currently about 14, and in about 5 days, I'm getting 7 more puppies to the farm. So, and these dogs are already in training. And then by the time we have an application completed from a warrior, we go through and do a little bit of pairing like Match.com, figuring out what warrior would be ideal with dogs we either already have in training, or if the person is accepted and we don't have an ideal dog for them, we actually go look for the specific dog and then schedule them. So it really depends on making that perfect match and ensuring either we have the right material for that or we get the right material for that.
Yeah, one of the things I found neat, like as I was reading, is that you actually paired the dog based on the lifestyle of the veteran. So it's not like you just like one of the things you were saying, and one of the shows is you were saying if you're a couch potato, then yes, you would get a dog that would be, that just kind of like mellow. And so can you elaborate a little bit about that? How does that happen? Like how does the connection or the bonding, because I know there has to be like a bonding between the animal and the veteran.
So between the lifestyle matching, it really is, does your family have a lot of cats? Do you have small children, long walks on the beach, or are you a couch potato and watching Judge Judy? The dog needs to be able to be either low speed to hang on the couch with you, or high drive because you're going from kids soccer event to late night hockey to you play pickleball. I don't know, whatever makes you happy. But so the dog really is matched to be able to fit into your life, not be a hindrance. And that's really, from that aspect, it really is trying to, best thing is Match.com. Like you are spending 23 hours a day basically with this creature. You have to like each other. You have to like doing the same things. And And if that's not considered in the pairing process, it can be detrimental. It can actually be a hindrance to the person. So really, that's why we try and pay very close attention to having the same interests and the same speed level.
Oh, okay. And it seems like you do an experiment, like you have a ranch and you have like 16 days. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the 16-day program, that is, the dog has already been trained, and then we have accepted the right warrior to be paired with that dog. The dog has done their public access test to make sure they are absolutely able to do everything we need them to do. And then the warrior arrives for 16 days on, we're on a rural farm in Virginia, and they stay here for a 16-day pairing process where it's really teaching the warrior how to use their new service dog. So they are attached by a leash, which we call their new umbilical cord. And for 16 days, we take them out and train in public. We go to Target, Walmart, Chili's, you know, the things you would do in your life with your family in your own community. And we basically do the training wheels thing and kind of go through everything with them to show them we're not going to let you fall. We're going to make sure you know all of these things. And then after 16 days, the dog has been basically doing everything with them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the dog at that point, through those 16 days together, has learned heart rate changes, you know, how that person sleeps, what they're like when they're sedentary and relaxed. But also when I took them to Target and they got really worked up, the dog started learning the difference. So at the end of the 16 days, the dogs have picked up on all of the alerts they're supposed to be doing and have been trained to do. And that's really where that bond then starts really kicking off, is when they go home and introduce it into their family and into their own actual routine. And that's when you get those text messages of those profound moments.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you know, and one thing I've always wondered, I think you've discussed this before, but you can really train almost any kind of dog to be a service animal, correct? If it's willing, but are there certain breeds that you guys lean more towards or use more often?
So the criteria varies on, I guess, what you also want the dog to be able to do in the end. So for example, diabetic alert dogs can be much smaller than a dog that would be assisting with mobility, because it needs to be able to manage a certain amount of weight. If you're going to be traveling a lot, a very large breed dog wouldn't be ideal because they have to fit where your legroom is on an airplane. So for a Great Dane, that's not going to be very easy. And then we also look at longevity, breed grooming issues. So a lot of drooling, a lot of fur issues, because you still are taking that animal in public. So it shouldn't be difficult to maintain cleanliness and all of those things. And then they have to just be nice, basically. You have to be able to take them out in public, and they have to be no impact. And that's really what we look for. So from a breed aspect, as long as they can actually be nice and it works for what they're supposed to do, for us, they just need to be food motivated so that I can reward them with a cookie to train them. And then pretty much any of them can actually be a service dog, yes.
Right. I guess more commonly you see labs or German shepherds, but you know, a Labradoodle could technically be a service dog if it was trained.
We love mutts from a health aspect. A lot of times mutts either can be a lot healthier, but also some genetics are unpredictable. But they tend to also bond very well. Breeder dogs are phenomenal, especially labs, any of the lab mixes, because they're also a very compact, medium-sized dog that doesn't require a lot of grooming or health issues. But I mean, some of the more unique breeds can be just as good and some not so much.
And real quick, I'll just take a pause for a second here. I saw Miss Soto sent, hey, can I please get the website again? If you guys keep an eye out on your email, we'll be following up with the link to sign up for the Leash to Valor EPM Pause for a Cause run. If you were talking about Leash to Valor website, it's just leashtovalor.com.
Leashesofvalor.org.
.org. Pardon me. Leashtovalor.org. Thanks. Blaine's typing that in now for us. But yeah, if anyone else has any other questions, I saw Jennifer ask one a minute ago, but I think we kind of answered it during the process of that. She's happy. Do the warriors need special care? Do you teach veterans how to care for the dogs vaccinations? Do they have yearly checkups for longevity of life? So I guess Jennifer's kind of asking, how does a veteran, get acclimated to caring for the dog? And do they go to a vet just like any other dog? Do they have to go to a special vet?
A lot of questions to be answered, actually. So veterinary care for the dog, we usually help them either make arrangements if they're not comfortable making them themselves. If they already have other animals in the household, they probably already have a family vet, and we just transfer the records over. The dogs, while with us, have all of their shots already. So once that is transferred, they are required to annually recertify for the behavior of the dog. And with that, we also kind of do a health and wellness check to make sure that the shots are up to date. The dog hasn't turned into a potato on toothpicks, is when we say food is not love, because sometimes they have a tendency to overfeed their dog at first. So we also have to do a little weight management. And that's usually, yeah, the check-in and the recertification really is also just to get an eyes on both, annually.
Nicole Jolly.
I see that. Let's see here. Nicole Jolly asks, do you have any German short-haired pointers or Belgian Malinois? Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, it's a French word.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at French.
So Belgian Malinois, we actually have one currently in the program. We do call them unicorns for our industry. They are a very high drive dog that is extremely trainable, but depending on the type of warrior, that could be a really boring job for them. So sometimes it's a disservice to the breed to give them a low speed job. But like I said, we currently have a unicorn in the program, and all she wants to do is hang out with her person. So she absolutely loves this type of job. German short-haired pointers, I wish somebody would donate them. I wish they were in shelters, but they're very rare to come by. They're very smart dogs. So nothing against them, but they're hard to get.
And then how do you guys come to have dogs? Is it donations, or do you adopt them as well? Or
so we have breeder donations. So a lot of our white labs come from a breeder in Texas. He's another veteran who breeds dogs specifically to donate to organizations like ours that give them to veterans. So it's just a long chain of organizations working together. And we work with other animal rescues that either will keep a lookout for dogs that are suitable for our program, or we are what's called an intermediary between pet ownership and shelters. Sometimes people do what's called an owner surrender. Life circumstances change and they have to give up their dog, but they want to make sure the dog goes to something. So we are contacted by people that, they've become a caregiver for a family member and couldn't take their German Shepherd. And Nikki now is a service dog up in Chicago. So it worked out for everybody, and the former owners get to follow their former dog's new career, changing this warrior's life. So, as heartbreaking as it was for them to give up their animal, they do get to see, the life's journey goes on for everybody. So that's what we try and make happen, is use rescue dogs and give them a new purpose.
that's very cool. It's very, very cool.
Nara said, good afternoon. What branch do you see come to you more often? Navy, Army, etc. Have you reached out to the reserve units to talk to them about your services?
So we are listed with Wounded Warrior regiments, and we are referred by a lot of mental health professionals that work with veterans and active duty. It really is a hit or miss in the field on how people get to us. And when it comes to branches, probably currently, I think a lot of Marines and Army. And I mean, I've had a few Navy, but I think a lot of that is because I am Navy. So it was also in my network that people were referred lately. But Marine Corps, combat Marines, especially from the invasion, is what we see a lot of.
Awesome. So I read a little bit more about, you also do like research. You're like, I feel like the bridge between the veterans, the VA, doing research as far as like getting information, how you were saying that basically prescribing the dog, like it's not something in the data. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that? Because I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, so we are partnered with Thomas Jefferson College of Nursing out of Philadelphia, and we've been trying to work on basically establishing the efficacy of service dogs, meaning that you have prescription levels where if you go get an aspirin prescription right now and you say 50 milligrams, it's guaranteed 50 milligrams on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in Europe, everywhere. There's a consistency for prescribing something. So the expectation of prescribing a service dog for a specific condition currently can't be reliably filled because there's no industry standard saying for autism, you need to train for this, for diabetes, you need level of this, for PTSD, level 5. So mental health professionals or doctors in general are not actually getting the continuing medical education to even give an educated prescription. And then there's no out in town guarantee. There's no FDA or anybody checking that this prescription they're requesting for their patient is actually guaranteed going to have that level of training to mitigate that condition. So we're trying to, in a nutshell, without getting too nerdy, establish these prescription levels to show some kind of efficacy for this level of PTSD. We have seen success with this type of training for these conditions to mitigate this, so that somebody can on a prescription pad say, I'm seeing these conditions, this is a successful treatment methodology. And it's a very lengthy process, and we're currently through phase 1. And in the long run, this is really supposed to help support the VA. They've done 2 research studies already, both valued over, I think, $10 million each, with no reliable outcome because there just is no guidance to even set the VA up for success. So in the end, to be able to help more veterans than I can even graduate dogs is to change the entire prescription aspect to ensure they can get them anywhere reliably.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's, it's such a shame that there's not, a more standardized way to see that, because I think that, even me not being a veteran, I know that when I see my dog or I pet my dog, like it makes me feel better, and I'm sure that there's scientific studies to back that up, but I think that that's really great that we're trying to come up with a way to standardize it, because I know that there's been, I want to put this lightly, people kind of taking advantage of the service animal designation and then kind of using that to, take their dog with them on the plane. And I can understand, loving your animal, but when that kind of gets in the way of someone that really needs that animal with them, that's kind of when I start to see a problem with it. And that's part of kind of what you're trying to address, correct?
Yes, and actually last year, so at the end of 2020, Department of Transportation came out with a new ruling for traveling with emotional support animals versus service animals. I don't know if anybody saw in the news, there's a lot of big hype over what types of creatures are allowed on airplanes. We were a major influencer on the backside of this transition since like 2016 to make those changes. And that really is, it sounded worse than it was in 2020. So the airline is basically now just saying, if your dog doesn't have training to behave on an airplane, it cannot come on. That is a differentiation between an emotional support animal and a service animal, is really the level of training. And that's what Department of Transportation finally did a ruling on, which was crucial in not having people wanting to skip the pet fee and just, getting a letter or imitating a service animal and bringing it in cabin without having the proper training for a dog to be 30,000 feet in the air in a metal tube. There's a lot of things to work through if there's no training. So, there's imitation going on, and there needs to be tightening down on rules. And that is what we're trying to affect in different industries.
Right. And, obviously, I'm not trying to say people shouldn't be allowed to, but it is interesting when someone has like a service tarantula or a service peacock and they're trying to bring it on the plane. Let's settle down. Let the veterans bring your dogs. Okay, we don't need the peacock. Gotcha. We don't need this the service tarantula or the service peacock. I'm being told I need to talk louder. Sorry. So one other thing that I kind of wanted to get into with you is, we've been working with Leashes of Valor for a while, and I'm wearing the Lives Not Alone shirt because at EPM, part of our major goal is we're a mortgage company, but we want to be more than a mortgage company, and we kind of take that approach, whether it's the charitable organizations that we work with or some of the the things that we do within the community. But this idea for a virtual run really kind of just started as, we would have a meeting every week and we kind of throw out ideas, and didn't matter how wild it was or how simple it was. If it was a good idea, we'd try and invest in it. So one of the ideas that I threw out was, I'd seen other organizations or other traditional runs go virtual, and I thought it would just be kind of a cool way to raise some awareness, one, for Leashes of Valor, but two, EPM we're huge on fitness and making sure our employees, value their fitness, and fitness is such a big part of mental health as well. I know after I've had a long day, it feels good to get a workout in. But I wanted to remind everyone that's on the call, if you haven't signed up yet, you're welcome to go to the email that we send out following this. We'll have a link to sign up, or you can email me directly. I'd be happy to send you the link to sign up. But the virtual run is basically just a 5K. You do it on your own time from the 16th of April until the 30th. So you've got 2 weeks to run it. I'd suggest don't take 2 weeks to run it. Try and run it in a shorter time than 2 weeks. But when you sign up, they'll ask you, or the website will ask you for, your shirt size and your address. And one of the great things about the race is once you sign up, about a week later, 2 weeks later, you'll get in the mail a cool shirt to wear, a challenge coin to remember the race and show that you're a supporter. But I wanted to just touch on that because, beyond the things that, EPM does as an organization, we also, we value helping others, and we value, being more than a mortgage company. So anyone that's on the call, if you haven't signed up yet, I know that Blaine just dropped the link in the chat as well, so you can scroll up and register there. But we would love to get as many people, whether you're at EPM or not, if you have a friend that is a veteran, or a friend that maybe has a family member that has served, this is a great thing to share with them as well. All of the proceeds are going to Leashes of Valor so they can continue helping veterans. We're not making any money off of this, and I wouldn't want us to regardless, but I think that when we presented this opportunity to you guys, it speaks a lot about Leashes of Valor to have you guys just give us your full support and say, yeah, that sounds awesome, let's run with it, for lack of a pun, but we really are going to run with it.
True.
Walk.
Right,
Walk.
or you can walk.
Like
And
me, I'm a walker, so.
Right. And that's
I am too.
right. That's another important thing to know. While you can run the race and try and run it your best and submit a time, if you want to walk it, walk it. If you want to walk it with your dog or do it, over the course of a couple of days, that's fine. I think the really important thing for us is just one, getting active and getting physical, and then two, you're supporting a great cause while you do it. And I think that that's kind of the thing that we also really wanted to drive home. Not only is there, this great organization, but we've partnered with them to try and, one, help them, but two, just raise awareness too, because, another person knowing about Leashes of Valor and the great work that y'all do is, another potential person that can help, or another potential person that can tell someone else about it. And I think that that's kind of the great thing about this race. Once people start running it, hopefully you'll go on social media and tag EPM, tag Leashes of Valor. Yeah, please tag us so we can share it, one, but two, so we can raise more awareness for Leashes. Because I think that, the work that you guys do, it's so great because one, you're helping a veteran, but two, you're kind of taking this thing that has a lot of barriers to get to, and it's not, you can't just go to Walmart and get a service animal. You can't just go adopt one. And then what I really am touched by is that taking the time with the veteran to really get the dog to know the veteran to know the dog. That's, the coolest thing about it to me is I think that's like really going the extra mile and making it to where they have that bond that, you can't just pick up at the store.
Yeah, and I think what's really neat also is that you are trying to also like work with passing bills and stuff like that, because I think there's like challenges. Can you elaborate a little bit about that, Danique?
Yeah, so all that research ties into more policy in DC that has to do with the efficacy of service dogs and trying to get the VA to provide service dogs. But again, it's not set up for success. So, politicians are passing policy that is not going to go anywhere, going to waste a whole bunch of money because they're missing major ingredients. And then again, with the Department of Transportation, bill, we changed that so that people wouldn't be exposed to fake service animals because of the training impact that has. That could literally ruin a service animal and could also set several people into a tailspin depending on the type of incident that happens. So it's actually very dangerous for people to be exposed to that.
Okay. Is there any testimonies that you can share with us as far as like feedback that you've gotten from these warriors of what, impactful this, has been for them as far as like having service dogs?
I have feedback from the warriors, but also sometimes from their families or spouses. Hawkeye's mom, so the spouse of Hawkeye's warrior, she said that this last year, because Hawkeye is the March 2020 graduate when everything locked down. So this last year has really been his first year with a service animal while the entire country has been changing. And he said it's been profoundly life-changing for him. He said he's never been going out more than this last year. And he really got into disc golf, but also his wife started participating in marathons and 5Ks and traveling for them because he's able to be independent and doesn't need her to run everything. And she can reliably go out of town to run a marathon in another city, and he can stay home and manage the kids, manage his anxiety and manage his career because he has Hawkeye in his life now. So it's a multi-impact feedback from that family. And a lot of the guys just say like it's changed their relationship with family members. Our graduate in Montana, he's a 4th generation farmer, and he works with his father. So that's who was taking the brunt of his PTSD, lashing out. So he said it's just profoundly changed their working relationship, but also their family relationship and how they get along, and how Tango basically works for him and his father now. So if his dad's in a bad mood, like Tango will nudge over on that side of the truck and hang out with Grandpa instead. So these dogs do a huge job for their actual warrior, but I think through that have a huge impact on just restoring family dynamics and just dignity, and for somebody to just go back into a community. So you just see a more involvement and more success that way. And I think just how they hold their head higher.
Yeah. And I think actually I read a story about Atlas, the dog, like it proved to be like really hyper for the warrior, and you guys redirected. I think it's also neat that you not only work as a twofold, you do it for the warrior, but also for the canine. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like,
yes, I mean, obviously my original love for working dogs, that wasn't going to go wasted. So I still stay very active on the working dog side of the world. And when we have dogs that I see have too much drive for our program, with both of them, it ended up also being a little bit just too much testosterone. They needed a more high-speed career. So this is the second dog that is actually now working in explosive detection work. The first one works for SEPTA out of Philadelphia. He's a dual purpose detection canine, and Atlas is now in Florence, Alabama, I'm sorry. And he is part of the special response unit for explosives. And he was so on point to finding a ball that he was obsessive. And he had to just be exercised so much. He was just not happy just walking around Target with us. That was not enough work for him. So we just realized that despite him being a phenomenal, obedient animal, the dog was going to be miserable if I forced him into the career I was envisioning for him. And so I contacted another organization that takes dogs like that and donates them to police departments that can't potentially afford these types of dogs on their own budget. So Atlas was donated to Florence, Alabama Police.
that's awesome.
I think I wanted to ask one more thing. When you're picking out a dog and you've got a warrior and then a dog, what's that kind of first meeting like? do you immediately jump into training, or do they come and kind of slowly get acclimated to one another? Kind of, how does that work?
First off, it seems a little bit like that moment when you hand a new baby to a new parent, you know, when they have a little bit of the shakes, like first time touching something precious. So a lot of times you see that brief moment where you're like, you know, Richard meet Carrie, or, you know, any of the warriors' names, and they have that moment of, oh my God, is this real? Like, this might be the solution. You know, it's a very profound, vulnerable moment because they asked for something, and it's not real until that moment. So that's like this is happening, I'm getting help. And so we let them, first day is kind of like slow dating, you know, just do some basic obedience, walk up and down the driveway with your leash, and just get familiar with each other's tone and, you know, your gait, how you walk, figuring out how to do a correction so that you're not too much of a wet noodle, you know, like that love relationship starts very fast, and then it's hard to sometimes enforce discipline. And dogs are like 2-year-olds. They will absolutely try every opportunity they can to be like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you the first time. So, you know, just getting them to mitigate the amount of love they're pouring into it and still be cognizant of the training so that they can proudly manage their dog in public. But
Yeah.
it gives you goosebumps the moment when they meet their dog every time.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, and I was wondering, is there a thing behind, because you give 16 days, is there a reason why 16 days? Is it something standard, or is there that you 16 days at the owner when they're at the ranch? Is it 16 days?
Honestly, we kind of picked 16 days to try and condense the program as much as possible, because a lot of our warriors actually are career professionals. Like they have jobs, so they actually have to take time away from work to do this program. So we're trying to make the least amount of impact on their family life, but also on their financial life, without sending them off with zero training, because that doesn't necessarily help either. So we've also sometimes been flexible on the 16 days. We've had one warrior come through who works for a government agency that wasn't able to take 16 days consecutively. So honestly, at this point, our program is very much whatever that warrior needs. Like once they are approved in the program, we will just shape it around to ensure they are set up for success. And if that is 16 days together, or 4 days here, 6 days here, we'll build it and make it happen.
Awesome. One of the things I read in one of your shows that you were sharing is like to make public awareness. What is the thing that the public should not do when they see service dogs?
Catcalling, pointing out the service dog or talking to the service dog and not the human. If you look at a service animal as a medical device and compare it to a wheelchair or a prosthetic, it would be like you addressing somebody's wheelchair, and you're basically addressing their disability directly by doing that. So despite a service dog being absolutely adorable, I want to pet them all as well, I promise you, but actually making eye contact and giving the person dignity of addressing them first, and then telling them like you really appreciate their dog or something, at least has given them the human dignity that you spoke to them. And it doesn't call them out in the store and skyline them in front of everybody like, oh my goodness, look at the person with the dog. Everybody turns their head and looks at you. It's like if somebody pulled your pants down in public. It's very embarrassing and can be anxiety inducing. So just be very cognizant of catcalling. It has a much larger impact than people realize.
Too much to ask those questions.
Two more. Then
So
we'll wrap
we
up.
had 2 questions come in. The first one came from Jennifer, and she's got an inquiry in mind. She mentioned, so you mentioned cost of the dog. What is the cost of each dog? Do the veterans pay for the dogs, and is it based on the type of dog that they're receiving?
So our dogs are all primarily mental health PTSD service dogs. We do build in some mobility, physical support. So we are kind of just in one category. Our dogs are approximately $25,000 per dog. Industry can vary depending on the amount of training. So seeing eye dogs, dogs that are literally what we call life and death, like don't walk the person into traffic, life or death level training, are valued even higher from a cost of training aspect. And our warriors pay nothing. They pay nothing for travel. They pay nothing to stay during the program. We feed them, we house them, we give them the dog, we give them the entire starter kit. They are expected to be able to maintain the annual management cost of a dog, meaning I expect them to be able to feed the dog and do one vet visit a year. However, again, everything is custom built to that person. So circumstances in life change. We have a grant program where we can also help with catastrophic costs. Once somebody's in our program, they're in our program for life. So we are always there to support them on whatever new barriers may arise.
Very cool. Did you want to ask that?
Yeah, well, no, it's just I was just doing a research, and it seemed like if I were to get like a service up, let's say, it would be $25,000. Is that correct? Is that pretty much like the cost that it would? And I just think it's neat how you just give, able to give this to a veteran that actually needs this.
I mean, we are able to give this to a veteran who needs this because of generous donors, including EPM. So it's not for nothing, but yes, our veterans are very fortunate. There's a few organizations that are able to give service dogs for free. But for most people in this country, it is still very hard to access a service dog. And again, also from a prescription aspect, there's no insurance that would cover it if it can't be reliably prescribed. So it is a multi-level approach to ensure this tool is going to be available to parents with autistic children in the future, and diabetes, PTSD. There's so many different things that can have benefit of alternate treatment methodologies, but the tool's just not there.
And I think Cindy had one more question. She said, is there a waiting list for warriors wanting to be matched with a dog? Or do you work with similar organizations to get the warriors matched sooner?
So there's a partial waiting list through our program, and we work with other organizations. So we sometimes refer if they would be more suited to go through a different program, and vice versa. So we have referrals from other programs that said you would be better off going through Leash's program than ours. We're booked through 2022 reliably. Both of our classes are completely full, and we have more applications coming in. And a wait list longer than a year and a half is borderline unreliable, and that is for very horrible reasons. It's very hard to expect somebody to wait a year and a half or longer for help. That's just like waiting for a mental health appointment. So you're really trying to manage resources for these people and finding them also the fastest way to treatment. So if I have somebody who's applying for dogs for 2023, I have to hope that they are going to be able to manage to basically stay with me that long. And that's a very scary thought.
All right, cool. Hey, well, thank you so much for meeting with us. I don't want to end this conversation because it has been really enlightening and fun. But I think everyone that's still, on the call and people who watch this afterwards, I want y'all to keep in mind, this organization, Leashes of Valor, they're doing a lot for the veterans community. And like Danique said earlier, they rely on supporters to help people. So if you guys can, please, I'm going to bother you one more time, sign up for the race. It's not expensive. You're going to get a t-shirt out of it. You're going to get a cool challenge coin. And then all of those proceeds are going to go to Leashes so they can continue, putting dogs with veterans and getting service animals in the hands of people that really need them. So thank you, Danique, so much for meeting with us today and taking time out of your day. I know you're busy. We appreciate you letting us get familiar with the organization again, and anyone at the company that wasn't familiar. I hope that you'll, think about Leashes of Valor and consider joining us on the Run One. But even if you don't want to run, there's an easy way to hop on their website, send a quick donation, and show your support, because they really are doing great work.
Yeah, share it with your friends, post it on your social media, and then just get everyone involved. Share the love.
No doubt.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you.
Thank you,
Not a
Danique.
problem. Thanks, Danique. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.